Now, why do people call it that? And do I think it's worthy of that title?
I don't need that, got a mean stash. I just changed zip codes for the weekend. I don't need that, got a mean stash. I just changed zip codes for the weekend.
Well, I feel like I should be able to do anything with my FX30 that I see other people do with their FX3s or ZV-1s. Now, of course, if you know what you're doing, I should be able to do anything with my X-H2S, you should be able to do anything with your S5 II, etc., etc. But that's not the point, because I see the FX3 be kind of a staple in filmmaking, especially in small crews and one-man bands. And a lot of spec ads, commercial work, travel videos that I see online, which I'm really drawn into, are made with FX3s or ZV-1s or Sony cameras in general. And now, after a year of owning the FX30, I feel I have the same camera, just with a different sensor and worse low light capabilities. Now, what do I like about this camera so much? Well, first of all, the battery life is amazing. Now, the battery life on my X-H2S isn't bad either. Maybe it's as good, but on the FX30, I have yet to worry about battery life. Maybe one time on a wedding, I probably had to recharge 1 or 2 batteries and then use them again. So probably like four or 5 batteries on a day. But for a normal day shoot, you're covered with 3 batteries and you don't have to worry. Now I have 3 batteries, 1 original Sony battery and then 2 small rig batteries that I bought with like a dual charger for 40 bucks on Amazon. You know, you can keep this just really compact, just to handle, a couple of batteries in your backpack and you're ready to go. You don't have to rig it out with V-mounts and everything. Couple batteries and you're good to go with the FX30. Secondly, the autofocus is very good, as if you don't know that already. It has touch tracking, it locks onto your subject. It's really, really good, and it's perfect for gimbal use as well. So if you're worried about autofocus, definitely consider the Sony cameras. Now the next one might be a shocker to some of you, but it's actually the photography. Now, most people buy the FX30 as purely a video camera, which it's certainly video centric, but it takes great images as well. Now it doesn't have burst modes or a mechanical shutter, but as a content creation tool, just to snap some photos along with some video, it's awesome. Now I work for a marketing agency where we regularly have to go out for day-long shoots where we do photo and video, and I mainly only take my FX30 and I leave my X-H2S at home. I don't need the burst modes, I can just shoot video and then switch to photo and just snap some pics. It has great colors, punchy colors, it has sharp images. So if you have quick turnarounds with video, but definitely also images, you have punchy, sharp images. For corporate work, it's perfect. And this kind of brings me to another point that I really like about the Sony camera, and that is the color coming out of it. Now, I recently posted a quick comparison between this and my X-H2S in terms of colors and image quality. To my surprise, I maybe like the colors coming out of the Sony, like straight out the box, more than my Fuji. Recently, of course, Sony updated their color signs, and since then, they kind of got rid of that green cast that everybody talked about. And to my surprise, I actually thought the Fuji looked a little bit greener and the Sony was actually more kind of towards the magenta side. Straight out the camera, I really like the colors coming out of this. A lot of people talk about S-Log3 and S-Cinetone, but I actually like to shoot with the picture profile off, so PP off, and that gives you a little bit more of a punchy and more contrasty look than S-Cinetone. So again, perfect for corporate work, where you just need a clean and punchy look straight out the camera. Perfect. Another pro is, of course, the video-centric body. Now, the ergonomics, the recently added shutter angle, the features, the mounting points all over the body makes it a truly video-centric camera, which is great. This thing really is as less of a hassle to start up and get going as I have yet to experience. It just makes it a breeze to use, so yeah, love that. Now that brings us to a huge point, which is of course the image. Now, I really like the image coming out of this thing. It's a 6K downsampled image, which in my opinion, you do notice. It's a really sharp, crispy, and quality look, which I really like. Now, I like my videos to have a sharp and quality look where as you watch the video, you tell like the richness of the image, This thing is actually sharper than the FX3, so it should look even crispier. Although I have seen things shot on that sensor where I'm like, how is it possible that they get that quality and richness out of the FX3 when this is actually sharper. A lot of that has to do with things outside of the camera, but still. Now the XH2S, widely regarded as being too sharp on the internet. Maybe I could see, you know, a little bit more of the digital sharpness in the Fuji, where it's like less pleasing, and this is more pleasingly sharp. I don't really know how to explain it, but I think the sharpness of the Fuji has bothered me more in the past than the sharpness of the FX30, while I think the sharpness of the FX30 has impressed me more than the sharpness of the Fuji. So maybe a little bit hard to understand, but that's how I feel at the moment. And lastly, that brings me to the Super 35 sensor size. Now, I really like using Super 35 cameras. I know you full frame boys will tell me it's greatly inferior to full frame because of depth of field and sharpness and low light and everything like that. But I don't really care. The Alexa is a Super 35 camera, and it's widely regarded as being one of the, if not the best cinema camera in the world. I think you will be fine with your Super 35 sensor for your YouTube videos, in my opinion. Now granted, I have only used some full frame cameras by testing out my colleagues' Canons and Sonys, but I didn't really feel a whole lot of difference between the two, while the Super 35 sensor size gives you so much advantages. Now I mostly use my FX30 with the Tamron 17-70 lens, which is a great lens. Super light, especially for the reach. And this is basically your like 26-105 full frame lens in terms of reach. And I could just put this on my gimbal, my DJI RS3 Mini, and run around for hours and not even feel it. Whereas I have used an RS3 with a Sony A7 III of my colleague, and that thing was just huge, and yet it was so much weight. He had less reach than me. Granted, you know, low light will be a little bit better, but unless you're shooting in the pitch black darkness, I don't think it's going to be that much of a difference. But the weight on your arms for 3 hours, that's a big difference. You're gonna feel that. So in terms of, you know, compactness and running gunning and, you know, being a one-man band, the Super 35 or APS-C size sensors just give you so much flexibility. And then reach, of course, is another factor, because my colleague with his 24-70, he tops out at 70. I can go to 70 in Super 35, which is 105. So I even have more reach than my colleague with his much heavier setup. So I just think, you know, Super 35 gives you the best of both worlds. On one side, you know, the image quality, good enough low light performance. And then on the other side, just the compactness, the lightness, and then also affordability of the lenses. I haven't even mentioned that. This 17-70 Tamron lens, I bought it for I think 600 euros. If you want to go out and buy a Sigma 24-70, good luck finding it under $1,000. I think new you won't find it under $1,000. And it's much heavier. So, you know, a lot of pros, a lot of advantages to the sensor size, and that's why I run with the Super 35 for the foreseeable future, and I don't plan on upgrading to full frame. So that's just my opinion. I know a lot of you will be greatly offended by what I just said, but that's a discussion to be had in the comments. So comment down below if you prefer full frame or APS-C, and we can have the conversation down there. But in terms of my opinion, Super 35 all the way. Now, obviously, there's a lot to like about this camera, but are there also things that I don't like about it? Well, I struggle to get nice handheld looking footage. Now the FX30 has the active stabilization mode that has been put into the newer Sony cameras, and I have used it in the past and it works okay, only really when doing like basic movements, not a lot of panning or not a lot of movement, just really, you know, basic slow panning, a little bit front and back, left to right. But once you really start running gunning, I don't really see it being that much better than the normal stabilization. Now, of course, I use the Tamron lens that I've talked about being pretty light. Now, the downside to that is, of course, if you don't have a lot of weight on your camera and you start running around, that will cause micro jitters. And that's the thing about this camera. Now, it's possible. I've seen people do crazy things with this camera, like campaign shoots and everything, or fashion shoots in the street where it looks really high-end. So it is possible. Maybe they rigged it out with a little bit of weight, but that kind of defeats the purpose of using the APS-C format as being light and compact. And as an ex-GH5 user, I've used the Lumix GH5 in the past, which has crazy stabilization. Once you've experienced the Lumix stabilization, you kind of notice when the stabilization isn't doing a fantastic job. And in my opinion, the stabilization in this FX30 isn't doing an amazing job. So that's something I'm struggling with on this camera, but to be fair, that's something I struggled with on the XH2S before as well. So getting that real natural handheld look is something that's not that easy to achieve, in my opinion. I can't really get crazy or, you know, run around and get that action look without being, you know, absolutely executed with micro jitters in post. So yeah, maybe I'm doing something wrong. You can give me some tips in the comments down below, but stabilization, not that great. So would I recommend this camera? Absolutely, it's great value. Everybody's talking about this camera as a B cam for bigger sets where they use like the FX9, the FX6, or the FX3, but I see this camera being an A cam for a lot of people as well. Why can't you use this camera on a professional shoot? This is absolutely an A cam for a lot of people, especially on the smaller crews and the one-man bands. I mean, you don't really need more. If you can't get good results with this, you can't get good results with your FX3. So focus on lighting, composition, you know, the things outside of the camera first before thinking that, you know, getting an FX3 or getting an FX6 will suddenly level up your filmmaking. It's just not. But as an all-round content creation tool with stills included, and while simultaneously being a video beast, I think this is great value and you can't really beat it. That's it for me. Drop your questions down below, and as always, on to the next one.